to A Well-Designed Business. My name is LuAnn Nigara, and I'm so glad you found this podcast. Together with my husband Vince and our partner Bill, we have grown our company WindowWorks from the ground up. So I know and I understand the challenges you face in running your interior design business. I also know that your talent alone isn't enough to ensure your success. So on this podcast, we talk about strategies and practical steps to help you grow your business. But make no mistake about it, we have our share of fun here too, mixed in with those aha moments that I love so much. This isn't fluff. Nobody has time for that. Whether you are a new interior designer or a seasoned designer, I am here to help you create and to manage the kind of interior design firm that you dream of. It's straight talk and it's action. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hi, welcome to A Well-Designed Business. Today, Jenny Madden is back with us. Jenny was on the show last time, episode 332. And in that episode, she shared her absolute commitment to thoughtful planning and careful consideration when she and her husband considered having him join their team full time. Okay, so it's these things when we get into business, right, that can trip us up. Family issues, the unusual situations, the hurdles that crop up that we must prepare for before they happen, and so that we're ready when they face us, okay? And Jenny and Greg took a careful, thoughtful approach to that. If you are thinking about hiring a significant member of your team or somebody from your own family, husband, wife, partner, that's a perfect episode to really understand some of the great steps that you can take to evaluate if you're ready and how you will do it. All right. So it's no surprise that today Jenny is sharing her take on another one of these aspects of business, the time that so many of us deal with in one form or another called maternity leave, right? Deciding to have a baby when you're running a business is a big decision. Not only do you have to consider the same questions everybody else does when having a baby, you have your own personal situation, but you also have to consider the impact it has on your business. And so for a conversation about it specifically how you are going to handle it in your own pipeline, you can go back to Crystal Pickens' episode. But today, Jenny is not only talking about it in regard to when she had her two babies, but she's had to face maternity leave on both sides, okay? She's had employees, multiple employees leave and take maternity leave. And so this is, a whole different animal, right? And when you are not a team of 10 or 12 or 15, and every time you turn around, it could feel like it's either yourself or somebody that works for you that is out having a baby. And of course, it's a happy, wonderful, beautiful gift and a happy time in our lives, but that doesn't negate that it can be a stress and a pressure for you as the principal and for your business. So today, as soon as I say a big thanks to Kravit, we're going to talk to Jenny about that, right? So remember, Kravit has been sponsoring this show from the very beginning, and they're always finding ways to make shopping easier for you. That's why they have recently refreshed their website to help your experience be even simpler. With the new redesign, you can quickly access all of the tools like your account settings, price list, current and past orders, and more. The product has also been enhanced to offer tailored results to get you more of what you're looking for quicker. All right, so visit Kravit.com today and get your trade account signed up. All right, let's have this great conversation with Jenny Madden. Hi, Jenny. Thanks so much for coming back to A Well-Designed Business today.
Hi, LuAnn. It's so good to be here and talk to you again.
I'm really glad that we are back together, Jenny, because I just can't help but think the first episode that you were on, you shared, and I encourage everybody, the episode will be in the show notes to go back and listen to it. You shared the very specific process that you and your husband, Greg, came up with to protect yourselves personally, your family, your lifestyle, and your business on onboarding him and making the decision to have him at that time join your company. And I love that episode. And I refer to that episode and I send people to it when they come to me because I thought it was such a well thought out process. And today it's such a completely different subject, but also knowing you from working with you many years through WindowWorks and all the conversations we have, I love that you go through a lesson and then you look back and you break it down and you pull out the good, bad, and the ugly of it so that you learn from it. And so, to get us started, Jenny, tell us, we're obviously everybody knows, they've seen it in the show notes. We're talking about maternity leave and your own maternity leave as the principal and your employees' maternity leave. But you had something that you wanted to specifically say to me and to your colleagues before we get into the interview. Share that with us, okay?
Yes, thank you so much, LuAnn. I just want to start by acknowledging that motherhood and the act of giving birth is very personal. I don't think there's one right way to go about it, whether you decide to um, be a stay-at-home mom or continue to run a business or continue to be an employee. But I do think it's valuable to hear about other people's experiences and what they've learned from those. So I really hope I can bring that to the table, LuAnn. And of course, there are also some black and white legal and financial repercussions I can share today as well. Saying I certainly don't want to say that the way I've handled things is the way everyone should. It's so personal, but hopefully I can just share those lessons learned.
Yes. Well, and honestly, isn't that every conversation that we have on the show, right? This feels more personal because it is such a personal, intimate thing to first decide to have a child, then to carry that child, and then to raise, give birth and raise that child. But really, it's the same premise for everything. Just because I hired somebody this way doesn't mean you should. Just because I have a design proposal this way doesn't mean you should, right? And
Yep.
so I love that you wanted to just say it and to show respect to all of our colleagues listening. But we are going to talk about it from your personal experience and the lessons you learned, just like we have every conversation on the show from that perspective. And I love that you shared with me, Jenny, that really what you've analyzed in looking back at this, having gone through it with yourself and your employees, is that you said to me that it falls into the challenge and the gift of it falls into three categories: the financial category, the logistical, operational category, the emotional category. And you further said to me, and there's conversation for each of these categories, both from the point of view as yourself as the principal, but also from the point of view from the employee. And you've had both experiences. So when we think about these three different categories, what do you want to say to us about the categories, and which category do you want to start with talking about?
Sure. So let's go right at it with the emotional. I mean,
why not, right?
The gift of motherhood is emotional. Of course it is. And so let's say you're the business owner and you have found out that you're expecting, wow, a lot is going on. It's can be overwhelming. And then you also have the business side of things to consider. If you are the business owner and an employee tells you they're expecting, well, one thing that I have learned is to make sure that your response is a big old smile on your face and a congratulations. Because of course you're so happy for this person who hopefully you love and know well, and you're so excited for this stage in their life. But of course, as a business owner, you also have all of the, oh my goodness, what now? Things going on in your head. So hopefully we can help talk through some of the ways you can prepare and know that you will get through that as a business owner, so that comes all the more natural to you to respond with that big smile and the congratulations, and talk and listen for as long as the person wants you to about their big news. And don't start the conversation and turn the conversation towards, okay, so what's your last day going to be? And here's what I'm going to need from you, right? Let them sit in the joy of this new news first.
Right. It's so true, because, you can't help but have that knee-jerk reaction, deep in your mind of, OMG, how am I going to do this, right?
Yes.
I remember, my goodness, my daughter, the youngest, is 32. I remember, the same thing with the three of us, me, Vinny, and Billy. And at that point, I was the primary salesperson. If we were doing, I mean, I don't know, maybe we were doing $1 million in sales, a year gross, and I was probably doing 600 of it. And so, Vinny's like, yay. I'm like, yes, yay.
Yeah, so you might have some of that for yourself too, even, right? Like, so how am I going to make this work? And instead of just sitting in the joy for yourself, like worrying about how you're going to handle your other baby, which is the business you already
Right.
started too, right? So I think when I was thinking about this and all of the tender love and care that goes into managing maternity leaves, whether for yourself or for others, I thought about, you have to make sure you're giving the right care towards your clients who are going to undergo this transition. You have to make sure you're giving the right care to your employees whom you want to return and who might be stepping into your shoes if it's your maternity leave. You have to understand that that's might be a lot for them and care for them, but you also have to care for yourself. That's very important. And the beginning of motherhood is always, starting to lose that little bit of me time and care for yourself,
Kiss
but
it
don't forget
goodbye.
about it.
Yeah, the party's over, right?
But yeah, hopefully we can talk through some of the logistical ways you can prepare and financial ways you can prepare so that you can give more attention to those emotional needs for you and everybody around you.
Yeah. So, to just, bundle it up, right? Like, I think as human beings, when we're not in that situation and somebody would say, oh, one day your number one right hand woman is going to be pregnant. And when you're like, nowhere near that, you're like, oh, and I'll be glad for her. It'll be great. And the thing is, I think what you're saying, the point is to not be surprised if you do experience the happiness for a person that, like you said, and care for, but don't be surprised that you might have that little feeling like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? Because it's a natural reaction. And I also hear your point. I think what you're saying, Jenny, is don't be surprised when you have that feeling, but keep it ixnay inside. Like you just,
inside voice.
Yeah,
exactly.
inside voice, right? And so, and if you're not prepared, I think that's what your message is to just think about it ahead of time. Not, at this moment in time, if you don't have any prospective employee that is about to be pregnant or you have any reason to believe they are, you don't have to think to the logistics and the financials of it now. But it is a good exercise. I think your advice and what you're saying is to just play around with it in your mind. What would happen if this person did, and how would I feel, and get all of that angst out so that you really can come to what is a beautiful and happy thing for everybody with some joy and happiness, right?
Yeah, exactly. And just to give a little background on what my experience has been with maternity leaves at Jenny Madden Design, I myself have had 2 maternity leaves while owning the business. I have a 1-year-old and a 5-year-old, and those 2 leaves were very different. I'll get into that. And then I've also had 3 employee maternity leaves as well. So
I knew you had employee maternity leave. I didn't know it was 3, Jenny. I mean, what are you in business? 7 years, for crying out loud?
It's almost 10 years now.
Okay.
And I have to say, like, I think to some extent I invite it, and that's because I have always advertised a flexible work environment. I think that it's even pre-COVID, I offered a couple days a week work from home and also potentially less than 40 hours a week if the right employee wanted that. So, for example, if a 30-something experienced designer wants to join my team, but they want to join my team at 70% full time because they want time for a family, I'm on board with that. When I compare that person, what they can do for me in the business, to the early 20s employee who wants to work, 40 hours a week, those are comparable, if not the 70% time is actually making my life even easier, right? So I have always wanted to um, invite that experienced but potentially in a family zone type employee to join our company. And so I think to some extent I set myself up for this by offering that type of work environment. But I'm happy that I did, because the women that have joined my team and have taken maternity leaves, you know, they are amazing contributors to our team, and I will do whatever I can to keep them coming back.
That's great to know. That's great to know. And I hear you that when it's almost like it's your company culture, right? To be
Exactly.
supportive of family. And that means, when you have a company culture that expresses it in your hiring practices, in your interviewing practices, then you are literally attracting that to you. You're
Yep.
consciously creating that environment. And then it goes to say that they might come with one or two kids, but they could potentially have another. And
Or they're
oh,
already thinking about it, for
yeah,
example.
exactly,
Um,
exactly. Okay, so
so
you have done this where you've done this 3 times. What do we want to do? So we understand the emotional, right? So it's just be heads up, don't be a dummy about it, and understand that it is a happy moment, and you can get to the logistics afterwards. And is logistics next, Jenny, or is finances next?
um, well, you know what, LuAnn? Let's start with finances, because sometimes that determines how you're going to handle it logistically, right?
Okay.
So, um, let's say you are a small business owner and you're self-employed, meaning you are um, you're not getting a paycheck from your company, right? So if you're like many small business owners, you're not receiving an actual paycheck from your business. Instead, your taxes for the business are run straight through your personal taxes on a 1040 or something. And if that's the case, um, and you yourself are expecting and hoping to take a maternity leave, you are not eligible federally or in most states for any type of payment throughout your leave. So if that's your situation, um, you are likely not going to be able to have any income for the time that you choose to take leave. That's scenario one. If you are set up as an S Corp, for example, and you are giving yourself a paycheck, then you're paying into these disability programs that then can pay you out when you take maternity leave. So, as a business owner who's expecting, you need to understand that structure. There are some states that allow self employed workers to buy into the state's disability insurance system. And if you are able to do that, great, opt into it sooner rather than later, because oftentimes with disability insurance, you have to pay into it for a certain amount of time before they will pay you on a leave. So don't wait until you're pregnant to look into any type of short term disability insurance program if you are a business owner. So that's a little bit of the financial side from the business owner's perspective. And then on the, let's say you're the business owner, but your employee is taking a maternity leave or would like to. Let's talk about what the financial and also like legal responsibilities are. Um, Most likely, you fall into the category of having fewer than 50 employees. And if that's the case, you don't really have a big legal responsibility to offer maternity leave, which means you don't have to pay someone who wants to take maternity leave, and you don't even have to maintain their job in a lot of states if you have less than 50 employees. Now, think about the kind of employer you want to be,
Mm.
right? Um, do you want to offer that to your employees? obviously we've made the decision to offer a maternity leave where we're guaranteeing the person has the job back after a certain amount of time. Um, we do not offer paid maternity leave at Jenny Madden Design. So that's something that everyone has to evaluate for their own business of what they can do. Now, from my employees' perspective, they do get a paycheck every week. They are able to get temporary disability payments. So they're getting something like 60% of their paycheck for their leave through New Jersey's disability system. What that means for you as an employer is you're not paying them a paycheck, but you are still responsible for the taxes, the payroll taxes for those checks they get from the state. So that's something for you to know. It's not like you're paying $0 for them during that course of time for that leave if you offer an unpaid leave. You are still paying the taxes on the disability checks that they can get from the state. It's not huge, but it's just something not to be surprised about. And then one other factor is healthcare. So at Jenny Madden Design, we offer healthcare to our employees, and like many companies, we do a split for the premium. So we're not paying 100% of the premium like most, even in the corporate world, you're paying some portion of the premium for your healthcare as the employee. And this is kind of complicated. If you go on an unpaid maternity leave, and previously that portion of your healthcare premium you were paying was getting pulled out of your paycheck. It was getting withheld to pay for part of your healthcare. Now what? So now your paycheck is $0. So your employer can't pull that portion of the premium from that paycheck and use it to pay for your full healthcare premium. So sorry if this is getting into the weeds a little bit, LuAnn.
No, it's good. I'm there so far.
Important to just think ahead about this. So what you can do logistically to handle that financially is to have that conversation ahead of time with your employee. Make sure they understand that every month they're paying X amount of dollars that goes towards their healthcare premium. And what's happening behind the scenes is your company is paying 100% of that premium to the healthcare provider. And let's say it's half. Half of it is straight up getting paid by the company, and half of it is coming out of the employee's paycheck. Let's say, starting when their paycheck is $0, the employer is still paying 100% of that healthcare premium. If you, as an employer, decide that you want to be the type of employer that maintains your employees' healthcare through their leave. That's a decision you have to make. You're not bound to it in most cases of companies less than 50 employees. But, decide what kind of employee you want to be. And then you can have that conversation ahead of time with your employee and ask them if you can take more out of their paychecks leading up to their leave to then cover their health care throughout their leave. So you can prepare yourself financially as a company to continue to pay the employee's contribution of health care during their leave by having that conversation ahead of time. Or they can also just write you a check. That's like another way to do it if you didn't have that conversation far enough in advance, that you can kind of talk through, well, how much more are you taking out of my paycheck each month? I still have to pay my rent. I still have to pay my groceries. Like, they may be dealing with that type of a situation. You can't just take 3 months worth of premium out the week before they start taking leave, for example. Mm-hmm. So you want to kind of think these things through ahead of time. And know what you're required to do, and then think about what you want to offer. Obviously, ideally, you can have this, you can think this through before you hire and have it in an employee manual, so it's all very clean and straightforward. I would recommend that if you haven't hired yet or before future hires. Just makes it all that easier to have those conversations.
Okay, so let me wrap up a few things here, make sure I understand. It's funny because from the Window Works perspective, I've been through a lot of this, and most of it I was like, But it's been a long time since we only paid a portion of an employee's health care. So where we're at now at WindowWorks, either you're with us long enough that you've earned full health care benefits, or you're not with us long enough and I'm not paying any of it, right? So it's like,
Okay,
I don't
yep.
have that in between. And years ago we did, but it's too long for me to remember. And nobody got pregnant during that time either. So that was the other nudge of it. So just so I understand, if I'm paying somebody's first of all, just to put this off the table, if I'm paying somebody's full health care benefits and they're on maternity leave, there's no difference. I'm paying their full health care benefits. That's a no brainer. But what
Right.
you're saying is that if, and I like what you're saying about, think about now what you want to do. If you don't have any employees now, or you don't have any that are pregnant now, think about now how you want to handle it. And because it's just like we say on the show all the time, right, Jenny? Like, you don't have the conversation with the client about the nuance of the contract that they're upset about when they're having the upset. Because if you have it way back in the beginning, there's no emotion tied to it. It's not a, I'm trying to get this position. It's like, oh, let me just tell you how our maternity care works here and what you can expect. And so, so I understand what I think I heard you say is, if an employee is paying half through their deduction through their salary, when they go to disability and Family Care Leave Act, right, and they are
Yep.
getting 60%. If you were to take the half, now they're going home with $10 a week or whatever it is, right? Like, that's not going to work. So
Well, no, I can't even take their healthcare portion out of their Family Leave Act
oh,
check.
see,
That
that's a
check
good
is coming from the
clarification.
state.
So it's not, there's no paycheck to take the half from at all,
Correct.
is the point.
Correct.
And so in order to keep their health care benefits in continuation, the full payment needs to be made. And so what you're saying is, figure out with your employee, how is their half going to be covered, and don't
Correct.
hit them with it like, a minute before they're pregnant and they don't have the wherewithal to figure it out.
Exactly. And this is tricky. Like, as a business owner, I had no idea that offering an unpaid maternity leave meant I was paying still
Yes, the taxes and
while my
everything.
employee was
Yes.
on leave, right? So I'm still paying for a significant chunk of their health care, and I'm still paying the taxes on the checks they're getting from the state. And so, I'm happy to do it, but I do think it's just helpful to understand what you're in for, right? If I had understood all of that ahead of time, I would have still been offering the way that we do. But it's, how does anyone know this? I
Right.
don't think there's
It's so true. And because here you are, we, to wind it back, we have that happy emotional moment of, you're pregnant, yay. Right? And then we slide to the logistics of it, and what you're saying is that until you went through it the first time as a business owner, you could literally think, okay, so I think my biggest problem is, if this employee is going to be out for 3 or 6 months, it's replacing the workload. But what you found out was, I have to replace the physical operational workload, and I have to pay somebody to do that, and I'm surprised that I'm still paying their health care benefits. I have to pay the whole thing or figure out an agreement with them, which may or may not be an easy conversation. And I'm still bearing the burden of their taxes. And so that is a thing that, until you go through it the first time, to your point, you're like, whoa, hit me
yeah.
over the head. I didn't know that this person who was home having this wonderful baby is still going to cost me $500 or $600 a week.
Correct. And then the other thing to think about as the business owner, if an employee is going on maternity leave, is the workload, like you just said, and the potential financial implication of transitioning someone in who can cover for them. So if you want to try to maintain your same productivity at the firm through their leave, then obviously you have to hire someone, whether that's a freelancer, which I think is a great idea for maternity leave. I know, LuAnn, you have you have interviewed some people who might be great suggestions. I've
Mm-hmm.
also looked into elite design assistants. We use them, Designer Advantage. A lot of people say great things about them, but a freelancer who is coming from a company or who already is very versed in the interior design world, and whatever your employee does on a daily basis is a great idea, because if they're already versed in what you need them to do, it just reduces the training time that much. But it is important to have them start before your employee takes leave, so that there is transition period, so that they can learn from one another and there's overlap in case there are questions. And so during transition periods, when you have overlap, you're paying two people
Right.
instead of one person. So prepare for that. And you're going to do it on the back end too, because the day your employee comes back, and hopefully they will, um, they are not your freelancer. Let's say you hired a freelancer, isn't going to leave that same day. There has to be a transition and a communication of where things are being left off. So you're going to be paying for two people instead of one on the front and back end as well, if you want to try and maintain productivity. And if that all feels like too much, then think about reducing productivity. That's an option for you. If you have an employee is, okay, I used to take on 4 projects at a time, I'm just going to take one or two and handle them myself, let's say, if that's the situation you're in with one employee. These are all things that you can think about and plan ahead for.
Well, and the thing is, so there's a fine line there, right? In possibly reducing your pipeline during the period. And what I love is the whole reason that you wanted to do the show is one of the main points that you wanted to make is you still have expenses for that employee who's out. So don't just contract your income coming in, forgetting to allow for that. So it doesn't, if you normally can do with your employee 5 projects, so maybe is it 3 that you can handle that will still support your money that you need to make and the money that they're costing you to be at home having a baby, right? Or is it 2? And to reference again your first episode on the podcast, it's so typical of the way that you have always thoughtfully planned out your finances. And that's really the big huge thing, is that there are things there, you have options, but figuring them out ahead of time is so much better and easier than in the moment when all the fires and all the pans are burning and you're like, whoa, right?
Right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's so true, and I do like the idea of utilizing, Do Not Let Us Design for You, or Brittany Elms, my design assistant, or this other company that you mentioned. What was the name of one that you just mentioned?
Elite Design Assistants or
Okay.
Designer Advantage.
Okay, we'll
Yeah.
put all of those in the show notes. The thing is, what I like about that is because it's hard to say to somebody, I know you want a job and you're going to be great, but it's really only for 3 months or 4 months, and then have to say goodbye, or or you don't, you grow your business to support all of that. But that's another challenge there, right?
Right. When you're hiring someone as an employee, there's a lot more training involved than
Yes.
when you're bringing on a freelancer who ideally is already versed in the industry. I think when you're emotionally handling an employee's maternity leave that's coming up, do you also want to go through the process of hiring, which is incredibly time consuming to find the right person that you want to bring on as an employee, which is really for us like a member of your family? It's a big decision. And then training that person. It's a lot. Now, I want to talk about training real quick, because this is something that you can partly offload on the person who's taking leave, and try and get them to document what they do on a daily basis to train someone. Like I said, I love an overlap so that the person whose role is being filled can train the person who's coming on. If you can do that, great. But the other thing that I would mention is videos. We
Mm.
use
Loom,
loom.com.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
and you can basically do like a screen sharing video where you talk through what you're doing while you're doing it. Okay, now you click here. Now you add this. This is where this file is saved. And they're watching your screen and they're watching exactly what to do. I find that to be a lot more intuitive and easy to pick up for new hires or freelancers than just a written explanation of a training manual for a task. And so if you have someone who's going on leave, or if you yourself are and you're looking for someone to replace yourself to take some tasks on, you can create these videos at loom.com, for example, that will really help make that process easier, and the person can refer back to it. Like, that's a key thing to think about with training, is trying to reduce the number of questions that are going to come to you, because you're going to be busy, whether it's your maternity leave and you're busy being a mother, or it's, an employee of yours maternity leave, you're already going to be picking up some of what they were doing. So trying to make that training as efficient as possible is great.
I love that you mentioned both of those aspects, for them to document their job each day and every process within it, and also Loom. We have the same thing at WindowWorks. And, Adriana was with us 7 years. And this last year, 2020, was the year of revising our operations manual. I've said it before on the show. We have one. It was from 1978. It's 2.5-inch thick binder. We still have it. And I would tell you that there's no question that the core of that binder is applicable still, right? But it doesn't even use the word computer, let alone fax machine or answering machine, right? Like, we went right past all of the innovations all the way to grab your cell phone and to make a Loom video, right? So 2020 was the year of redoing this operations manual and getting it up to speed. And what was interesting was we had Adriana, who had been with us 7 years, our admin, in COVID, about a month into COVID, decided to leave. And I was like, oh, whoa, I'm not done your part yet, though. No. Wait a minute. Like, I'm still at 6 more months to my goal. And honestly, what we did was we literally switched gears. She gave us a 2-week notice, and on the advice of my cousin Eileen, she said, Lou, you do her job every day for the next 2 weeks, if it needs to be 3 hours a day or 4 hours a day, but you task her with completing literally everything she does, documented in an SOP and a body of work, a library of Loom videos wherever appropriate. Mm-hmm. And it was the best advice I got, to just, and so what that meant, I had to do a lot of her work, but she said she does it well. She knows it like the back of her hand. It's 1,000 years since you've personally done a lot of these individual tasks. Mm-hmm. Let her document them. And and that's what we did. And so that's another thing. If somebody is I did the same thing with my daughter when she was going out on maternity leave, working for me here at the podcast. I just said, oh, baby, just keep making all the processes in Asana. Just keep doing it. Just put it all there, because I need somebody to be able to find out how to do it. So I love that, Jenny, that's a very critical thing. And even if it is like that you just say, look, 1 hour a day for the next 3 weeks until you leave, or 2, whatever, is going to be devoted to this, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
And it's a gift that keeps paying, because now it's done.
Exactly. Yeah. So you have it for your next hire, et cetera. So that's really helpful. And let's see. I feel like do you think we covered the financial side? Do you think anybody would have any other questions on that, LuAnn?
Well, I think that the thing to go back and just recap there is that what you were saying in the beginning is, if you yourself think that you're at a season of your life where you can envision being pregnant at some point, whether it's 1 year or 3 or 5 years from now, that I think that your point of figuring out what entity you are, because it's, to me, when you said that about if you are a self-employed 1040 through your
Yep.
taxes as opposed to an S corp.
Yep.
I've always been an S corp. WindowWorks has always been an S corp. When I started LuAnn Nigara, Jamie Lieberman, my lawyer at #Legal, she had a conversation with me and she's like, "This is my opinion. Now go to your CPA, double check it. But I think you're going to be an S corp." Maybe she thinks I wanted to have a baby. I don't know. Okay. Anyway, but the point is that I didn't have that perspective because for my entire 40-year business career, I've always been an employee of the company I've owned. And
Got it.
so that's an interesting thing, Jenny. And I would encourage everybody, as I said, if this is in your future, you hope for it to be, that sit down with your CPA and say, what are all the ramifications if I were to become and switch to an S corp? Because if you're not planning to be pregnant for 2 or 3 years, maybe you don't make that move now based on the other mitigating factors that are within your own personal financial portfolio, right? But he or she may also say, well, if that's the case, this is going to be more advantageous. Or they might say, well, I think you're better off not ever transferring to an S corp, but here are the ways that we can build some wealth into your personal finances or portfolio so that we have that little cushion for you for those months, right?
Exactly. Right. Right.
Yeah.
And the circumstances of my 2 maternity leaves when I had children were really different from one another. But in both of them, we were still I was still really a sole proprietor. So I was in that boat where I wasn't getting a paycheck and therefore couldn't get disability payments. And so um, with my first child, I had um, I wasn't leasing office space yet outside of the home, and I had one part-time employee at that time. So what I decided to do for myself, and let me say again that my husband was not working with me at that time
Right.
either. He
He
had a
had a job.
separate corporate job with our healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
Um, at that time, I decided I was still nervous about maternity leave, even though I didn't have big financial repercussions for my family at that time. And the reason I was still nervous is because of that pipeline and the referral pipeline that's so common in interior design. I had a fear that if I stopped taking clients for 3 months, that the calls would stop coming.
Mm.
That, if because each project I did created the next one through that referral system. And I had already worked hard for several years to build up this business. And that made me very nervous because, like I said, my business was my first baby.
Mm-hmm.
So I was scared. And what I did to plan for that was plan for only a 6-week maternity leave for my first child. And what I did was tell prospective clients who were calling that I was available to start their project, say, 2 months after my due date about. So this is another logistical thing is you don't know exactly when the baby's going to arrive, whether it's yours or your employee's. So, trying to figure out your start and end date can be a little tricky. But anyway, even though I didn't have a big burden on the financial side for my first, I still created a pretty short maternity leave as far as maternity leaves go for myself because I wanted to kind of keep things going. And then I did transition back, right? I didn't start 6 weeks later with a completely full project load, but I had those projects lined up before my baby was born, probably, a month before my first child was born. I knew I was going to be starting projects 6 to 8 weeks later. And that's scary for a lot of people. That's why I prefaced this episode like I did, because that's not for everybody. And we can get into some of the ways I got more comfortable with that. One of the ways that I got more comfortable with it is reminding myself that you have to put one foot in front of the other with the information that you have at hand. You cannot predict everything. And why I say that is because, someone might worry, what if I want more than a 6-week maternity leave? and I'm telling people I'm going to start their projects on May 1st, right? What if it turns out this baby comes out in March and I never want to go back to work?
Mm-hmm.
Then you address it then.
Right.
That's okay. And I needed someone to tell me that, and I hope that helps someone else too, right? All you can do is put one foot in front of the other with the information you have at hand. Think about it, make a plan, move forward based on that plan. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow to anybody. It doesn't have to be baby related, right? You might have to call your clients and tell them their projects are getting postponed or that you can't help them anymore. And that's okay. We're grown-ups, they're grown-ups, and they will find a way to work through it. So make a plan for yourself and your business and try not to get too worried about the what ifs. That's important.
So good, Jenny. So good. I love that. I love that you said that because it is 100% true. You could have planned for 6 weeks out and then said you could have had postpartum depression and not
Yep.
been able to get up and do it. My own daughter has gone through postpartum depression 2 times and
Oh,
so severely that she's now going to start a podcast helping other people understand you're
great.
not crazy.
Yeah.
It's a real
Yep.
thing, right? And
Absolutely.
if she had had that plan, she never could have come back in 6 weeks.
Hmm.
However, to your point, you can just look at your clients and you can say, I would love to give you a referral to a colleague that can take this. Or maybe you're okay with giving me another 6 weeks until we start. Whatever it is what it is. But to make the best decision that you can with the information you have is it's just such a great gift, Jenny, that you have just given to a lot of people by saying that. Because to your point, being frozen over
Right.
what ifs is
Right.
so counterproductive. You don't like, and I love your other point. Your world could change tomorrow based on nothing having to do with a baby, right?
Exactly. And I think that's really can hamstring women, right?
Mm,
I mean, I think we all go through this where we're career planning and family planning mix up. And so it really helps me to think about the unexpected things that crop up in people's lives that have nothing to do with motherhood and like
mhm,
put it into that perspective
mhm.
when I'm worried about am I doing a disservice to a client or a vendor if I plan for this. No, you're not. You're making decisions based on the information you have now, and that's all you can do for the rest of your life.
It's the truth. It's the truth. Because you really, until you have a child, and I think it probably gives you a little better perspective. We made so much fun in the beginning about, yay, my employee's pregnant, but you can, I think we can be flip like that because we've had the kids, right? And we know that what we
Yes.
really are is super, super happy for that person, but we also know what we're all in for.
Right.
And
Yep.
part of what we're all in for is what you just discussed in this moment, which is you and your employee, you and your husband, you can make all the plans in the world. And that little person can just change it all. The employee that is definitely going to come back and say, I love this. I love being here. I'm not missing this. And the employee that is coming back in 3 months might say, I need 6 or
Yep.
all the things. And
Yep.
it does help if you've been through it. So you really do realize that you you are making your best decision in that moment and it really could change dramatically, and that's just the way it goes because it's
Right.
a whole human person in your world. It's
Exactly.
it's not a stick of gum just sitting there.
Very true.
Right.
And to that point, I think with employees coming back or not coming back or changing the length of their maternity leave, these are all things that can happen too. And so um, you know, that's one reason why if you can bring a freelancer on, it gives you a little more security if there is a change in an employee's plan too. So that's just something to think about that you might say, oh, hey, I want to reduce my productivity for 3 months. Well, then 3 months becomes eternity, or
Yes.
right. So it's
Yeah, and
something to
you
keep
have
in
some
mind.
continuity there to now go and make a new hire or whatever it
Exactly.
might be. So,
Exactly.
and I also do want to say that we've been talking about logistics, and when you just to point out that when you decided with your first baby that that your plan was to come back and transition back into work at the 6 week mark. That's another logistical thing to, well, who is going to watch that baby at 6 weeks? Is it
Yes.
a daycare? Is it a nanny? And is there finances attached to that? Or do I have my mom or my mother-in-law that can do this? And so there's a lot of things that go into all of this. And it's, unlike, well, I was going to say unlike other aspects of our business, but so many aspects of our business are wrapped up in emotion. And that's what makes it a bigger challenge, right? And this is so many emotions, from happy to frightened to, scared to, oh my goodness, all the
Yeah.
things, right?
Right. Right. And with my second, the circumstances were completely different in that I had leased office space that I was paying for whether I was coming into work or not. And I had two employees, and my husband had left his corporate job and was working for our company. So there goes his salary and the health care that was covering for our family. And so the idea of me um, as really
The
the
rainmaker.
rainmaker, right?
Yeah.
I'm bringing in the sales, I'm bringing in new clients, um, taking a long break, that just seemed a lot less feasible with number two, given those circumstances. And so I planned what lots of people told me was insane, which was a 3 week maternity leave with number two.
Whoa.
And what ended up happening was number two was 10 days late. So that 3 weeks got cut
Became
down to
nine
about like,
days.
and there was a lot that went into planning for that. And of course, many, many things could have gone wrong or differently, and I wouldn't have been able to do that. But um, it was possible for me to do it because I was able to transition back slowly. I didn't do anything in person for a short period of time, and I think that's more and more accessible now that we've gone through this year of COVID,
Mm-hmm.
right? Being able to get on remote calls, for example, if you're transitioning back to work, is just so much more accepted now. And I'm so happy about that for future moms who are going to be able to, service their clients without question in a way that feels a little bit more comfortable for them when they're transitioning back. So yeah, I understand a lot of different perspectives about what's involved in these decisions, and it's hard. It's not easy. I think it's one of these things that's a lot easier if you're in the corporate world and you can say, hey, I just want to take my 6 months paid maternity leave. Thank you very much.
And my husband's, month or two while you're at it.
Exactly, exactly. But if you could swing it and get through this, when it works, you can step back, watch your business continue to run while you take a reprieve. It's super satisfying to say, I made this baby and I made a business.
Yeah.
And you can be really proud of your mom boss self
Yeah,
in that
I love
moment.
it. It's so good. It's so good. And the bottom line on it is right where you started. It's very personal. Somebody out there listening couldn't even imagine thinking they were going to take a 3 week maternity. Another person couldn't imagine taking a 6 month maternity. And the bottom line is that whatever each of us individually imagines, when we're actually the one doing it, we might change our mind on it too. So
Exactly.
yeah, I remember Vin and Bill and I agreed that I would take 3 months. And we decided, even though it wasn't, like you said, a 50-person firm and all the things, that I would take 3 months. And it wasn't about me getting my salary. It was about me driving the business. It was about me bringing the sales in. And I fought for that 3 months. I was like, I have to have at least 3 months, blah, blah, blah. And, I did 4 weeks. I was bored. out of my mind.
You and I are cut from the same cloth,
Yeah.
LuAnn.
And the thing is, I did what you did. I brought her to work starting the 5th week. And by the 6th week, I hired a nanny. But to your point, I didn't go customer facing and probably till the 8th or 9th week. So I was spent, 3 to 4 weeks, 4 to 5 weeks in window works. But if, she was next to me and she was crying, I wasn't like, sorry, kid, I got a phone call. You know what I mean? It was like I mothered her. But when she was such a good baby, she slept all darn day. I'm like, this is ridiculous. You can only watch so much TV. And there was no Netflix. Couldn't watch what you wanted, right?
Yeah.
But and that was what was good for me. And, it's you have to your point, you don't even know until you're there. So
Exactly.
yeah.
And I think just to be clear, I could never have done 3 weeks with my first either. It's very different when you've been through it first before.
Yeah.
And there was a difference in my level of peace with taking more time versus less time. So I hope all the listeners understand that if your choices are different from ours,
yes,
good, wonderful. You
Right.
do you and your
Right.
way of mothering and your way of maternity leave.
Yeah. No, it's she was my first that came from my body. So the other 3 are my stepchildren, but it just, you do learn about yourself. And she was also such, like I said, I think that's a difference too. You have your whole way of processing and doing things. And depending on the way your baby's disposition is a whole different thing. I mean, she was sleeping through the night at 4 weeks. I had her on oatmeal and applesauce at 4 weeks. I mean, she was great, you know? And I was like, this is no fun. She sleeps 4 hours, wakes up for an hour, and sleeps again. I'm like, I could do a lot of work in that time. Oh, my goodness.
So true. I'm so grateful that I didn't have, colicky babies or, acid reflux or these types of things. Like there's a lot that can throw a wrench in your plan.
That's the truth. And we really didn't even talk about that, right? It's like, even your employee could have a challenging child and whatever that word means to that employee.
Yes.
I mean, and the whole thing is, I think, the big message is you got to pre-think as much as you can, set up agreements with, first, like you said, decide what kind of company are you? What kind of culture do you have? What is your perspective and your point of view, and how do you want to lead this company? Then have the agreements in place before it happens. It makes it so much easier, just like a client. Can we refer back to your hiring agreement? This is what we said we would do. It's like the same thing, right? So it's not emotional when it's an emotional time. And then to just ultimately, once you plan as much as you can for what you know in the moment, right? Your finances and logistics. The last and final thing is you have to leave grace for the whole thing to just get thrown up in the air, and you got to start over and rewrite the book, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Awesome. Oh my goodness, Jenny. I'm so glad that you suggested this topic. I know that we had that What Would Lou Do when a designer was getting ready to leave for maternity leave. And after that show, you wrote to me and you said, I've been through this 5 times in 10 years. I've got some things to help. I said, all right, let's do it. So I appreciate it, Jenny. I really do, because you really did have some really nice insights on it. And thank you so much for sharing them.
Thanks, and congrats to all the designers out there who are expecting or going through this. I hope we didn't scare you.
Right?
It's a beautiful thing, right? You're the best.
All
Thank
right,
you very
sweetie.
much.
Tell everybody
All
I
right.
said hi to your gang over there, okay?
Okay, I will.
All right.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Jenny is the first person to tell you that your personal decisions about having a baby, about handling a maternity leave, returning to work or not, and tackling parenthood as a business owner are a full nuance of factors that nobody besides you and your partner can fully understand. In our off-air conversation, Jenny reiterated to me that the tips that she shared today are not the end-all be-all. They are not necessarily the right answers for everyone. They were the right answers for her. And Jenny and I, together, we both understand three things. We both know that we both had easy pregnancies, we both had easy babies, and we both had a support system close by. Not everyone has these conditions, let alone all three of these. And I know that I've mentioned several times how my own daughter, Christy, suffered from postpartum depression after both her first and second baby. But I can tell you her first baby, our little Lucia, she literally cried every single night for a minimum of 8 hours until almost her first birthday. I am not exaggerating. They lived with us that year, and in my wildest dreams, I could have never imagined a harder first year of motherhood. So when I talk about racing back to work at 6 weeks, and Jenny talks about her quick return to work as well, we both know that this would not have been possible if you experienced something similar to my daughter or a different challenge surrounding your pregnancy and or the care and loving care of your baby. So the deal is, you do you, right? If you need time and space and rest, get it. You know how the saying goes, we all make plans and the universe laughs at us. All right. So the thing is, though, that Jenny's message is about making those plans, at least having those conversations. We've talked about this all the time on the podcast, how communicating expectations in advance makes the client experience better, from onboarding to execution to payment, whatever it is. It makes our partnership stronger with our vendors, our builders, our trades. OK, it's the crux of everything. And all she's saying is this is one of those other areas that you don't want to wait until you find yourself in the situation of either being pregnant yourself or having a team member be pregnant and not having pre-thought about what you will do. Laying the groundwork into your business now. How does maternity leave work here? Here's what you can expect. Here's what we will offer. See, this is proactive, which doesn't surprise me about Jenny one bit, right? This is proactive. This is a way that you build trust with your employees, and it also prevents hurt feelings and anger and conflict, all right? And as also Jenny said that she had to think about, and she encourages you to do it as well, what kind of employer do you want to be? All right, that doesn't mean putting yourself in a bad financial situation, and it doesn't mean offering something you can't afford to offer. It simply means thinking ahead of time about how do you want to be? What does fair look like to you? What does considerate look like to you? What does respectful look like to you? And even if you can't offer paid maternity leave, I really know that if your employees understand what the drill is up front, then it's nicer for them. They can understand what's going to happen, and again, no surprises. All right. And another nuance that I want to just take a time to emphasize here that Jenny pointed out is that when you or someone on your staff is out for maternity leave, you don't have to look at that period of time as being able to maintain full productivity, right? You might decide that it's okay to scale back temporarily. And that might sound a little crazy pants in your head, right? But it might be the thing that saves you. The whole idea is it might be better for you to take one or two less projects and keep the ball rolling until your employee returns or you return, okay? So, and if you have the ability and the infrastructure to keep the same level and push through, that might be the way to do it. Again, this whole conversation is just give it some thought beforehand. All right. And Jenny pointed out that using freelancers who are already familiar with the industry can be the saving grace answer. We've had on this podcast, Do Not Let Us Design for You, with Yashley and Taylor. We've also had Brittany Elms, my design assistant, okay? And Jenny has said that she used Elite Design Assistants. We also have had Bethany Maybe from the Interior Procurement Group. So these are all resources for you that maybe it will help the whole transition go smoother. Okay? Now, before we end today, I want to take a quick moment to thank our show sponsor, My Doma Studio, and to tell you that the wildly successful 19 Hours virtual conference put on by My Doma last year is back. That's right. This is a free industry event, and it will be held this year, April 13th and 14th, 2021. We all know by now that the world has changed, right? And while 2020 was very much a year about insulating ourselves, our businesses from what comes next, it's time to take the lessons that we've learned in this industry in this past year and put them into more action. Okay. Right now, many of us are very, very busy. And so last year we were scared to death what was going to happen. And now many of us are scared because there's so much business. So please join us at 19 Hours. It's a free event. All right. You're going to come, you're going to hear panel discussions, you're going to have camaraderie, you're going to be able to talk in the chat and just get that love and that support and that information and education you need. And you know what I always say. One idea that clicks something in your brain, that creates an action in your business is worth it, right? So join us at mydomastudio.com/19hours. mydomastudio.com/19hours. I will see you there because I'm going to be there, right? Okay, thank you tons to Jenny for joining us today and sharing her insights on this sensitive topic. It's can be rough waters navigating this, but it is something that we'll probably all face in one way or another in our businesses. So thank you again, Jenny. Appreciate your insights. And for all of you, thank you for showing up today. You know how much I appreciate that you do that. And I just give you that reminder to decide to be excellent. Thank you so much for joining me again today. This podcast is a production of WindowWorks, your resource for custom window treatments and awnings. To learn how we can help you on your next interior design project, go to www.windowworks-nj.com. And if you're interested in working with me on your business, either through masterminds or one-on-one coaching, or you want to know how to get my book, The Making of a Well-Designed Business, or you just want to know what's going on in the podcast land and where I'm going to be, all of that is found at LuAnn Nigara.com. Thank you so much. Have an excellent day.